Hearing, and this is the Kootenai County Board of Commissioners and Community Development. It is September 29th, 2022. It is 6:02 p.m. and I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks and Duncan, and I believe Chairman Filios is on the Zoom.
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so let's see. Kay, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Yes.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. So tonight, deliberations is a typical part of a hearing, but we are going to continue to a date certain, October 6th, which is 1 week from today at 9 a.m. So that's when the public testimony will be over tonight, but the commissioners will deliberate and make a decision then. Are there any changes to the agenda? All right, hearing none. Poll for conflicts of interest?
No.
All right, what I wanted to mention is after the first hearing, one of the people testifying, Mr. Torgerson, he called to tell me about his testimony, but that's as far as we got, and his testimony is recorded in the minutes and in the hearing examiner's information. So I'm still able to render a fair judgment because I would have gotten that information this week anyway. I just got it a little sooner. So that's all I have to say about that. And we are here for CUP 22-0004. And this is Ingle AT&T Smartlink. And I will have Director Callahan lead us off since there's some housekeeping.
Thank you, Commissioner Duncan. Housekeeping is the operative term. I have two items I need to mention. First, the applicant has asked me, and so I'm passing on to you, that they would like the opportunity to do a rebuttal in writing. So they would like you, in the same way that you want to defer your deliberations, they'd like to defer the rebuttal so that they could take what they hear tonight, work it up in a written response, and then make it available to you. That, of course, is a discretionary call on the board's part. And you would want to make sure that they're agreeable to waiving the federal law that ordinarily would start kicking in here soon because we're running out of time. The federal law actually requires that we complete this review within a certain time frame, beginning from the moment we receive a complete application. And I believe we're getting close to the end of that review. I believe we have something on the order of 2 or 3 weeks left.
Okay.
Another issue that I will call housekeeping, the staff and I were preparing for tonight, going over the hearing examiner's written response, and I realized that the hearing examiner actually used the wrong comprehensive plan. She referenced our 2010 plan, which was repealed and replaced with the 2020 update. She now knows that that was an error. We've talked, we've confirmed, I've got the new plan to her, but it creates a complicating factor for tonight where a portion of her written response is effectively invalid. Normally, I would ask you to remand it back to the hearing examiner to fix that. Given the federal law, we would once again, if you want to go there, need to have the applicant agree to waiving the time frame. Alternatively, since you have the opportunity to hear everything tonight that the hearing examiners heard, you could continue on with the public hearing. In my view, you might want to ask our legal counsel his view. But I think it would be safe, once you hear all the testimony, to just make your own decision based on everything you have heard, and that would be sufficient. Pat, do you agree?
I do agree, and I do think in any circumstance we need to take public testimony tonight. Everybody's here, they're ready to testify. I think the due process mandates that.
All right, and then as far as the hearing examiner, is she still able to amend her report, or we will just skip that section?
If you continue on, we would skip it and just mark it up as an error.
Okay. All right. Chris, Bill, what are your thoughts?
I agree with what you've said.
Okay. Chris?
I would say continue.
All right. So as far as, we'll go ahead and take public testimony tonight, and the hearing examiners, the one section will be, I don't know if you want to call it disregarded, but invalidated.
Modified at least.
Modified, okay. And then what I need to hear is from the applicant about waiving the federal law.
We wouldn't agree to waive it, but we would suspend it for that extra time, so that it wouldn't accrue during that time, if that's amenable.
Yeah, that would be, that's acceptable to me.
Okay, so it's just from today until we deliberate, that time won't count against the clock? Is that my understanding?
Yeah, another word you could use is tolling.
Tolling?
Either way, I think.
All right, and does it require a motion?
Yeah, probably. Just
Okay.
to have it
Be
in the record.
safe.
Okay. All right, make sure I have all this stuff. All right, and then how do my co-commissioners feel about getting the rebuttal in writing?
It's fine.
Okay, Chris?
Yep, I'm good with that as well.
All right, so then would we be ending public testimony tonight, or that would still not end until Thursday morning when we will have already received the rebuttal?
You could, tonight, after everybody's done testifying, you could close public testimony with the exception of leaving it open for the receipt of the rebuttal.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, then I will, if you're okay, I'll make the motion that we accept the applicants agree to toll the timeframe.
I second the motion.
I'll second. Okay, go ahead.
Chairman Philios,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
All right. I think that is all of the housekeeping items. And so now we'll go ahead with staff to present staff's case, and if you want to bring up the other. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. I'll be introducing the application, including the location of the subject site, findings of fact, agency responses, and staff recommendation, as well as a cheat recommendation. Can't hear you. Can everybody hear me now?
Yep, bring up the volume, your volume.
Oh,
Bill, do you want me to scooch forward or back?
Back would be probably better. Thanks, thank you. Thank you, Vlad, I appreciate it, because I'm hard of hearing.
the subject property is located southeast of downtown Coeur d'Alene. It's located on Potlatch Hill. The subject property is approximately 7+ acres. It's forested, and it sits at the top of Potlatch Hill. The property itself is located within an island of Kootenai County unincorporated area. It's in the agricultural suburban zone, and the comp plan designation is border. City of Coeur d'Alene surrounds the property on the east and north side, and I-90 to the west and south. The property is located within the City of Coeur d'Alene area of city impact. Pursuant to Kootenai County Land Use and Development Code Title 8, if a project is located within the City of Coeur d'Alene area of city impact, the county is obligated to allow the city to provide comments within 30 days of solicitation. The City of Coeur d'Alene zoning map classifies the zoning immediately to the east as R3 PUD and R1, one parcel to the north of the subject site. The development will be located or is being proposed on the west side of the property near Potlatch Hill Road. It will consist of a 70 by 70 foot fenced area with a 150-foot tall lattice tower and a 5-foot tall lightning rod installed at the top. The purpose of this tower is to provide the latest 5G and 4G LTE technology. Based on our code requirements, the applicant is supposed to submit propagation maps, radio frequency maps, to show whether or not the need for a wireless communication facility is warranted. They have submitted the existing coverage and then the proposed coverage. I will let the applicant's legal counsel elaborate further on the scientific evidence and how they were able to derive to the map that's before you tonight. I know that there were a number of questions at the last two hearings before the hearing examiner where concerns were raised by the public with respect to whether there was sufficient evidence presented by the applicant to sufficiently address the need for this tower in this specific area or in this specific site. The applicant did submit a number of photo simulations from various locations of what the tower would look like. I know that at the previous hearings they submitted additional photo simulations from other locations that they have subsequently done following the first public hearing before the hearing examiner. Those are not part of our application, or at least part of our presentation, but they will definitely be presented by the applicant tonight. During the agency comment period, we solicit comments from various agencies that are before you on a slide. We did receive confirmation of the fact that the location is not interfering with any of the FAA requirements or Kootenai County Airport requirements, as well as the Idaho Department of Transportation Division of Aeronautics. The other agencies that commented, such as Eastside Highway District, required an approach permit. Fire and Rescue had access and addressing requirements, and so on. So the three primary agencies that typically review a wireless communication facility are FAA, Kootenai County Airport, and Idaho Transportation Department Division of Aeronautics. So staff drafted an analysis prior to the first hearing before the hearing examiner. I'd like to clarify that there were 2 public hearings conducted before the hearing examiner due to an error in legal notification for the first hearing that was conducted on August 4th. It was brought to staff's attention right before the hearing that there were a number of individuals that were not contacted within a 500-foot radius of the subject property. Through our research, we determined that there was a printing label or a label printing error, which we did resolve with a second public hearing notification that was conducted on September 8th. So the September 8th hearing was a continuation of the first one that was conducted on August 4th. During both of those meetings, we did, the hearing examiner did take testimony from the public, and the comments are incorporated in the HE recommendation. So staff's analysis basically is the fact that the concerns raised with regard to compatibility could be addressed with the existing vegetation on site that would be left around the perimeter area of the proposed cell tower compound. The concerns that were raised with regard to potential fire risk, we sided with the analysis of Gerald Archer, Fire Marshal for Kootenai County Fire and Rescue District, in which he stated that while the concerns outlined by the public are very real and valid, they have existed on Potlatch Hill for many years, and some are terrain and aspect related, which will never change. There were a number of concerns that were raised by the public for both previous hearings as well as tonight's hearing with respect to health risks associated with the proposed tower. If there is a need, we could have our legal counsel elaborate on that, but the Telecommunications Act of 1996 prohibits the state and local regulation of such facilities to deny an application on the basis of environmental effects of radio frequency emissions to the extent such facilities comply with the FCC regulations. We will let the applicant elaborate on the aspects of how their facility will be within the prescribed regulation confinements of the 1996 Federal Act. Staff also confirmed that that Mr. Ingle is the current property owner. In fact, he subdivided the subject property 3 years ago, and at the time, our assessor's office, including surveyor's office, confirmed that the title report and other information was accurately stating the ownership of the property. We did determine that there was no, we don't find any other information to suggest anybody else has vested interest that may have not agreed to this project moving forward on the subject property. For the reasons that I have described, we initially recommended approval of the request prior to HE public hearings. During the first public comment period for the hearing examiner, there were a total of 31 comments, 30 in opposition, 1 in support. Concerns were raised with regard to aesthetics, potential risks of fire, light and noise pollution, health concerns, negative impact to wildlife, limited escape routes, parcel ownership, existing Paul Edge Hill road conditions, increase in vehicular traffic, and trespass and vandalism concerns. During the second public comment period, we received additional comments, 1 in support, 1 neutral, and 21 in opposition, citing the same concerns. And for the board hearing that's being conducted tonight, we received a total of 14 comments in opposition with the same concerns from the 2 previous hearings. The hearing examiner heard this request, as I stated, on September 8th and subsequently recommended denial for the reasons that are stated on the slide. The first one is that the hearing examiner does conclude that the application does not conflict with a border designation. But the second statement that was previously, stated on record by Director Callahan as he introduced this case, is we found out that the statements or the findings that the hearing examiner made were based on the obsolete 2010 comp plan goals and policies. Item number 2, application requirements that have not been met or have been insufficiently addressed according to the hearing examiner's analysis. Written verification that alternative sites have been reviewed and are insufficient, specifically co-location and co-mingling with other sites that are within a full 4-mile radius. That question was raised by the hearing examiner at the hearing that was conducted on September 8th, and the attorney at the time responded with a statement that they have submitted sufficient information that there isn't no tower to co-locate on, and that anything beyond that would be outside of the scope of our review.
Hold on just a minute.
Anybody on Zoom, can you mute yourselves until we're ready to take your testimony, please?
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Moving on, the description of the need for the proposed facility at the subject site is inadequate. That basically means that they want further clarification why this specific site is the only site that was suitable to meet the all intents and purposes for cell service coverage. Why not other site in close proximity? Why this one? And the other statement was that the hearing examiner requested, there were concerns raised why the applicant is proposing a lattice tower that is 150 feet tall. They would like to have additional scientific evidence that perhaps a monopole or a tree type like tower can be constructed on the subject site at a lesser height. So they would like to have additional photo simulations and analysis to address alternative design for view shed and compatibility reasons. The other comments were raised with regard to the need to have a forest management plan to address or to prevent fire on site. And that is strictly at the discretion of the hearing examiner. It's not code required. And the last one, the hearing examiner cited that if the board chooses to approve the request, is that they need to have the applicant restore the access road to its current state and make a financial commitment to upkeep it. The road leading to the property is public. It's under the jurisdiction and maintenance of East Side Highway District. Therefore, because it's public, it's the taxpayers, including the applicant themselves, are making an annual financial commitment by paying their taxes. That's another statement that was made, but I want to make sure that that you understand what the hearing examiner's position was. I don't have anything else to add unless you have questions for me regarding staff's analysis or HE's recommendation.
Could you flip back to the coverage map? You had two of them. That one and then the other one, that one. What's the difference?
So the difference is, as you can see, I would say this is kind of light green or lime color of the
Okay.
existing coverage. And as you flip to the next screen,
I see.
The yellow overlay shows what the coverage will be. If the tower is installed in this location, there will be significant coverage to the east of the subject property.
I see.
I would be more comfortable if the applicant and their designee or their design professional address the technical aspects and the scientific evidence behind the propagation maps, because that question was raised at the two previous hearings. And I think it's the burden on the applicant to address those findings.
Thank you.
Chris, any questions?
Excuse me, no, none for me.
All right, thank you, Vlad. So we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Josh Leonard of the firm Clark Wardle, and we're based in Boise. I have to tell you, though, it's really good to be back in Coeur d'Alene. My first ever job out of law school was for a small firm in Coeur d'Alene. My first ever internship was at City of Spokane Valley, and I went to Gonzaga. It's great to be back. I wish it wasn't as cold here as it is this early, but I'm here representing AT&T. For the record, my address is 251 East Front Street in Boise. Also online, we have Deborah Griffin of Smartlink, the site acquisition team, and Randy Morrison, who is AT&T's construction manager for the project. As an initial matter, I would make a motion to include the PowerPoint presentation in the record of today, and ask that be included. And Vlad, you're fine.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Madam Clerk, do you have an exhibit number for that?
Yes, B1001.
So there it is.
Thank you very much. And to advances up and advances up? Great. Okay. Maybe? Whoops. Saw something. There we go. Right. quick rundown of our presentation today that's designed to introduce the project, show how it meets the standards for approval that are contained in the county's code, and then address the concerns that we've heard. Quickly, I want to address the application requirements. I'd note that these are contained in subsection C of section 8.5.132, and they're termed application requirements, as opposed to standards for approval. In this, going down through this, we've provided all of these with our application. Licensed engineers written verification for co-location, a written verification that alternative sites within 4 miles have been considered and either determined unavailable or not technically feasible. I'm not going to read the rest of them, but we've met those requirements. The standards for approval are a little bit are towards the beginning of that section of the county's code. The maximum height that we can go to is 150 feet. The setbacks that we have to meet, 300 feet from existing residential structures, 150 feet setback from parcel boundary. And because we're over 60 feet tall, or our proposed tower is over 60 feet tall, we have to have engineering data that demonstrates the existence of a significant network coverage gap that would be impractical, not impossible, but just impractical to remedy by other means. I'd also note that here, the significant network coverage gap, and I'll talk more about it in a little bit, but the code's requirement of a significant network coverage gap is a little bit outdated. And it's outdated because in 2018, the Federal Communication Commission, or the FCC, adopted and approved a new order. We still meet the higher code requirement that you have in the Kootenai County Code, though. I'd also note that where I underline best blends, design best blends into surrounding area, that doesn't mean that it has to perfectly blend in or we wouldn't build a cell tower anywhere. They don't necessarily blend in. The board has discretion to require it to be painted a certain color or of a certain design to make sure that it is the best that would blend in that area. Again, because it's over 60 feet tall, we must include 3 co-location opportunities. There can't be any other facilities on the lot, wireless communication facilities. We're required to preserve existing vegetation at the site to the maximum extent possible, and then chain link fence at least 6 feet tall with access via a locked gate. Towards the bottom there, you can see the Telecommunications Act. I applaud you for this. In your code, you have what's called a saving clause or a savings clause, and that's that here it says that with regard to everything else that's in your code, none of it shall be interpreted in such a way that it would constitute a violation of or conflict with what's in that Telecommunications Act of 1996 and the citations given there. I'll come back to that in just a moment. Jumping into the site, Mr. Finkel did an excellent job of giving you details about the site, so I'm going to be really quick here. A couple things I'm going to point out. The required setback is 150 feet from property line. Ours are all bigger setbacks than that, varying between 159.7, which isn't much bigger, all the way up to 707 feet 9 inches. And meaning that the setbacks we achieve are in excess of what's required by code. Next, a close-up view of the site plan. It's a 70, you can see the square at the bottom right-hand corner there. It's a 70-foot by 70-foot area, which is a very small portion of the parcel. As mentioned a minute ago, we propose to remove minimal vegetation. That's a code requirement, that minimal vegetation is removed. And the reason for that is for screening purposes. And then the 6-foot chain link fence with privacy slats and a lock gate also is required by code. It's a 150-foot self-supported tower with 5-foot lightning rod. Previously, we'd proposed or offered that we would be willing to do what's called a monopole if the commission deemed that less intrusive, or if the board deemed that more or less intrusive. We'd be willing to absolutely consider that. The other thing that we can do is and it sounds silly when you're talking about a cell tower doing this, but we can paint it any color you'd like. No lighting is required, and it's designed for a minimum of 3 additional carriers. As we're going to demonstrate in a minute with our RF justification, did I go one more? Let's see. We're proposing the minimum height at this location that's necessary to achieve the carrier's coverage objectives and to comply with county code. We're designing this to minimize the offsite impacts. One of the things I wanted to mention, and I'll come back to a little bit, is we have, if we're over 60 feet, we're required to have at least 3 co-locations, 3 other carriers, spaces, not have them on initially, but have spaces for them in the future. That's to minimize the number of towers that would be necessary to support their gear. To do that, we have to make the tower taller. And the reason for that is they can't be at the same level or there's interference and it garbles the signal. So they have to be separated by enough that they don't do that. So that takes up the size of the tower. Let's see, I'll go to the next here. The original visual study. Originally, as required by county's code, we submitted a visual study with our application that looked at views from each of the 4 directions. At the pre-application conference for this application, the AT&T team asked staff if that would suffice, and county staff agreed that it would. Before jumping into to these views, I wanted to talk you through what is called a balloon test. A balloon test, this individual, he's been doing this for, I think, just shy of 25 years. He takes a balloon, raises it to the height of the tower. The balloon is 4 feet in diameter, so he knows that to scale the 8-foot antennas that go on a cell tower just to double the size of the balloon. So he puts it up to that height and then takes photographs from various places around the valley and then takes a scaled tower top and puts it where the balloon was, so you can see what the views would be from there. And the reason I make this explanation is that at least during the August 4th hearing, there were some complaints or some insinuations that these were photoshopped or fake, and I can assure you they're not. They were done by this gentleman, as you can see by the letter. Using the balloon test method, the independent contractor provided several visual studies. This view is looking south from 201 Bruce Drive. You can see in the bottom, or excuse me, not bottom, the left-hand side of the slide, the one with the rectangle around it, that's the vantage point from which the photo was taken. And then you've got the top being the before and the bottom being the after. You can see the new tower there in the distance. Here we are looking southeast on Coeur d'Alene Lake Drive and East Sherman Avenue. And you can see, again, the location from which it's taken. The top is the before, the bottom is the after, and the one on the right is zoomed so you can see that indeed the tower is visible above the tree line from that location. It's not obstructive, but it is visual. It is visible. Next is the original from the original visual study is looking north from Terrace Condos. In this instance, the balloon isn't above the tree line. So rather than showing a tower that wouldn't be there, they wouldn't be able to see, he indicated the location of where that is. It's just below the tree line and you wouldn't be able to see it. And view 4, looking north on East Coeur d'Alene Lake Drive, you can see in the bottom there where that's looking and that the tower cannot be seen from the location of that vantage point. We expanded our visual study. We're only required to do the 4. We did more than that. And in this instance, we broke it into 2 groups. We broke it into views 5 through 8, in which the tower is visible, and then views 9 through 15, in which the tower is not visible. And this aerial shows the vantage points of the first group, views 1 through 4, in which the tower will be visible. Again, on the left is the vantage point. You can see the top is the before, as is, the bottom is with the tower, and then the one on the right is zoomed in so you can see it. Here, looking east from the golf course clubhouse, you can see the tower. Not needing to zoom in there, you can see it on the above the tree line, bottom right-hand corner. And another looking south from East Vernon Hill Road. Again, you can see the tower there. It's zoomed in on the right, so you can see it. Another looking south from Fernon Boat Launch. You can see the tower on the bottom there. It sticks above the tree line from that location. The second group of the expanded visual study, views 9 through 15, this shows the vantage points from which each of these are taken. And these are the ones from which the tower is not visible. And these images were taken from east of the proposed tower site, at the base of the hill, and then extending further east into the Armstrong Park neighborhood. And here again, as with the ones before, these locations actually were selected based on feedback we heard during the last public hearing, because many of the residents who offered comments are from the Armstrong Park neighborhood. Rather than going through each slide, I'm just going to say that each slide includes an aerial depiction that shows the location from where it's taken, and then it depicts where the tower is, just that the tower is below the visibility. One thing I wanted to mention here, I wanted to point something else out in this image. Although the proposed cell tower isn't visible from this location, there is a large infrastructure item front and center in the image, the light pole. This isn't a shot at anybody. This isn't me trying to be funny or
Folks,
cute.
you'll have your turn, please. Folks.
This is me expressing surprise that every time I do one of these, people are adamant against a cell tower but drive by these every day without noticing them.
Okay, folks, please, just keep it down so he can get within his time frame.
Again here, the same thing actually. The new tower is not seen from this location, Sky Harbor Drive, but you can see the dual tower with the power lines. Again here, Sky Harbor Drive is not visible. Another Sky Harbor Drive looking southwest. It's not visible from here. Won't be seen from here either. This is looking west from Rutledge Circle. 964 North Armstrong Drive, tower won't be seen. And 802 North Armstrong Drive will not be seen. Okay, the coverage details. When AT&T's engineers determine the existence of a significant gap in coverage, they do it by a couple of different ways. The first is by customer feedback. They receive feedback from customers who are unsatisfied with coverage in a given area. Then they look at computer modeling. And these are tuned models, and I'll tell you what that means. That means that these models are applying the expected or the existing at first radio frequency spread, and applying not just topography, but also structures. Topography and structures, even trees, they block signal or degrade signal and make it less strong and less reliable. The search ring, and there's two terms I'm going to use. The search ring is the area in which site acquisition folks like Ms. Griffin, who's on the phone, are instructed to go and find potential sites. And the reason why they're given a search area is that the search area is where a tower needs to be placed to serve not just the search area, but what's called a targeted service area. And the targeted service area is typically includes the search ring, but they're not the same thing. The search ring is much smaller than the targeted service area, and it's almost always located within the targeted service area. And the search ring is the area, again, in which the AT&T engineers have determined using the tuned modeling software that locating a tower there would best serve AT&T's wireless customers. And the way the search rings are developed, the center point of the search ring is typically the best or the optimum location for a new wireless communication facility to serve that targeted service area. What we're showing here is the search ring. And we call it a search ring even though it's obviously not a ring. In this case, it's a rectangle. Questions about the coverage. So this is as it exists today. And there are a couple of things to cover here. The first is that the proposed wireless communication facility is what's called in the industry a coverage and capacity site. As it says, coverage is the need to expand wireless service further, that either into an area that either has no service or has unreliable service. And then capacity is the need for more wireless resources. This site has two main objectives. To provide that new dominant 4G and 5G LTE coverage in specified areas, including along I-90. One of the things that cell companies have noticed that as people buy electric cars that are connected and are almost always online or whenever they're available, it drains bandwidth and makes it and hurts capacity. Within that targeted service area, which is the red oval, everywhere that's not covered with the green signal modeling, it is a significant gap in coverage within that area. And I want to take a quick moment to clear something up. Some of the opposition materials that were submitted incorrectly stated that the only type of service that AT&T is allowed to go after is voice, and that the only signal that matters is outdoors. That's just not the case. That's factually incorrect. Nobody goes outside to use their cell phone to get a better signal. Maybe in the early days of cell phones, I know my dad had a briefcase cell phone that worked better outside, but since then, nobody goes outside. Most cell phone use is either in vehicle or in building. In 2018, I mentioned a little while ago, the FCC issued an order pursuant to its authority to interpret the Telecom Act and specifically rejected that significant gap, least intrusive means test that had been the case in the Ninth Circuit for so long, and instead stated that it's a legitimate goal under the Telecom Act for a provider to seek to provide new services, to improve existing services, and to fill a significant gap in coverage. That 2018 FCC order was appealed by numerous municipalities. The name of the case was City of Portland v. U.S. It was consolidated into the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit overturned two irrelevant pieces of the FCC's order, but upheld the FCC's order that adding capacity and adding new services and improving existing services, as well as filling a significant gap in wireless service, all were legitimate coverage objectives. The new standard is less easy to quantify. The new standard is whether a state or local legal requirement materially inhibits a provider's ability to engage in providing wireless service in a given area. This site, in addition to providing new dominant 4G, 5G LTE coverage and enhanced capacity, and I'll come back to capacity in just a second, it's going to relieve capacity on an existing AT&T site that's north. You can see it up there at the top in the blue pin. That site is at capacity and needs some of its bandwidth or some of its users offloaded. I mentioned that the proposed facility will be 150 feet tall. That 150-foot tip height is important for a couple of reasons. First, as I mentioned, we're required by code to include co-location space for 3 carriers in addition to AT&T's antennas. And then also to get the lowest antenna location above the tree line so that it's not being interfered with by trees. The yellow shows what coverage will be with the 150-foot tower, whether it's whether it's a monopole or a lattice tower. The covered area that's through here will be increased by 20.38 square miles that doesn't currently have reliable coverage. One of the things we want to point out is that the county's code requires us to look at a couple of different radius lengths. The first, one of the code standards that's required for approval of a wireless communication application is that if you're over 60 feet in height, you need to examine whether you can achieve a 2-mile separation between other towers. And if you can't, if you're within 2 miles, you have to show why the other tower won't work. The second, and although technically it's not a standard of approval, it's a requirement for a completed application, requires an analysis of all towers within 4 miles. AT&T conducted both of those reviews. Let's go back one. So, some of the opposition has talked about there being 55 towers in this area. However, a lot of the towers that show up in these searches are either unsuitable for co-location, either because they're on a rooftop where there are fewer co-location opportunities, or because they're a different type of tower, like a radio tower. A radio tower and a cell tower don't play nice. They scramble.
Excuse me while I jump in here. Leslie, the applicant has been going now for over 21 minutes. I noticed there are probably 25 slides remaining. How much time does the applicant have?
6 minutes and 45 seconds.
Can we stop the time?
I'll give you 15
Remaining.
extra seconds.
Thank you.
Yes, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Alternate candidate analysis, the 4-mile radius. The top is the larger one is 3 miles, so that you can see a more focused view of it. And the 4th mile are the ones that are down in the 1 mile from the 3-mile border, down in the bottom left-hand corner. You can see a lot of these show no tower installed. We went to these sites to see what the tower was, who owned it, and there's no tower there. Again, same thing, you can see the alternate locations. With this, what we did is we weeded out the ones that were unsuitable because they were radio towers or for whatever other reason, or they're just not there, and identified 12 potential alternatives. Here's the list of the 12. Of those 12, 6 of them, AT&T is already on the tower, and it doesn't fill this significant gap in coverage. So AT&T can't put their own antenna on a tower on which they already exist, where it's not providing the amount of coverage that they need. Let's look at the ones, though, that don't have coverage on them or don't have antennas on them. This is alternative site 2. It's an existing 60-foot tower. Proposed 60 foot is where the antenna would be. And in this instance, they would achieve this, using this one would achieve only 14.75% of the targeted service area versus 100% of the service area with the new proposed tower. Again here, alternative site 4, coverage of 10.51% of the targeted service area, as opposed to 100% with the new proposed. 12.54% achieved with alternative site 6. Here we get a little bit better. We get 52.5% served with alternative site 8, and here 52.3% with alternative site 9. Why weren't other bare ground sites considered? Kootenai County Code doesn't require, either in its application requirements or in its standards, that we examine bare ground sites, locations that do not already have existing towers. The goal is co-location, existing tower sites. Although it's not required by code, AT&T did look at other bare ground sites, and based on a review by AT&T's RF engineers, this site was selected because it provides 100% of the coverage necessary to fill that gap in coverage. I want to take one more quick step back and talk a little bit about co-location versus new tower. I've heard a couple of people in the background as I've been talking here today say that those other sites would be too expensive. That's exactly wrong. The co-location is way cheaper than building a new tower. Co-location is putting your antennas on a tower and paying a monthly rent, not building $1 million tower. It's just, it's far different. And if AT&T could co-locate, they would co-locate. Here's what makes a potential alternate site candidate. Carrier search ring. Where is the service needed? Is there a wireless communication facility allowed in the zone? Dimensional standards, is the parcel large enough? And then access, does the site have legal access? And then practical concerns, the grade of the property, the power, whether there's power nearby, fiber optic cable nearby. And then last but not least is often the most difficult, a willing landowner. We can't go in and make them lease to us. FirstNet, I wanted to let you know that this is a new service that's coming in with this tower. It's a law enforcement and emergency services service. It's dedicated. It includes a new band specifically for that. It allows quick response and reliable service for cell service for law enforcement and emergency services. Again, FirstNet. This is a slide that I debated on putting in, but I want to show you. The highlighting is mine. This is a slide that I pulled from some of the materials that the opposition to our tower submitted. The highlighting shows in red those that are way outside the authority that's given to the county by county code. The green is that it's in county code. We have to comply with the fire marshal's minimum safety requirements. And then the blue is it's close. It's similar. A couple of them that I wanted to point out. Number 9. The opposition wants that development and construction plans must have full planner liability or commissioner liability. It's just not going to happen. We're governed by what's in the code, what was in the code on the date of the application, and that's what we've met. Again, standards for approval. This is the slide we showed earlier. Importantly, no commenting agencies recommended denial. All of the comments that came in were either no comment or comply, or from the city of Coeur d'Alene, it was that they approved of the request. Also, staff in their staff report said staff cannot recommend denial. Meets the requirements. Staff believes that the public's concerns are adequately addressed, and staff cannot recommend denial at this time. So why did the hearing examiner recommend denial? We heard one of the reasons. It was that the hearing examiner inadvertently considered and applied the wrong comprehensive plan. More importantly, though, the hearing examiner impermissibly elevated the comprehensive plan over the zoning ordinance. And what that means is the zoning ordinance is the law that governs. The comprehensive plan is an aspirational document that's a guide. And in this instance, the hearing examiner used the comprehensive plan as a zoning code typically would be. Also, the hearing examiner imposed much higher standards, including that there needed to be a high degree of confidence for the need of the proposed facility, and that's just not the standard in the Telecom Act. And then confident, again, not the standard at the bottom there. I believe,
Folks, he gets a few more seconds due to the interruption.
we've addressed citizen concerns. I can tell you, going back to the Telecommunications Act, the two biggest ones here are that a denial must be supported by substantial evidence in a written record, and substantial evidence does not mean concerns. It has to be evidence. And then finally, the last one at the bottom there, cannot deny if denial would have the effect of prohibiting the provision of personal wireless services. In this instance, the area that's not covered in the green map, that is covered in the yellow, is new service, and denial would have the effect of prohibiting that. And I would stand for questions.
Okay. Chris, any questions?
No, I don't have any.
Okay, Bill?
Thank you.
I have not.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to get started with a presentation. We have 3 presenters, and one of them will be for 3 minutes. The other 2 will be for 15 minutes each, and what we'll have to do is go through to make sure there are 10 folks present in order to allow those 15-minute things. So I think we'll go ahead and verify that first. For Ann Wilder, if you have given up your time to Ann Wilder, can you stand, and then when I say your name, you can sit down. All right, Rosemarie High. So there should be 10 people standing, and as I say your name, you can sit down.
We don't know who. Because there were 20 people.
Gotcha. All right, so Rosemarie High, are you here? Okay, you can sit down. Iris Wood. Okay. Boris, oh boy, Boris, thank you. Tanya?
Yes.
Okay. Abby, all right. Greg Bishop. Thank you. Larry Morrell? Thank you. Oh boy. Glenna? Thank you. Katrina? Thank you. And Marcy? Great. All right. So the second one for Alyssa is Barbara McFarland. Okay. And Stephanie Evans. Twee McCain. Thank you. Caitlin. Brittany. Elizabeth Granier. Okay. Frank Granier. Thank you. Ingrid Castle. Okay. Alan Wood. Olin Wood. All right. And it looks like we're one short on that one. Oh, all right, just one at a time. All right, I'll take this gentleman in the green shirt. What's your name, sir? Yes.
This is Leslie.
Okay.
Here's some.
All right. Okay, so the first one to start the presentation would be, is it Izette Motola?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
We just need to, because we have to shuffle
All right, so this one will be
Before I start my presentation, I just have a question to David Callahan. He's the supervisor, I think, for the community development. When you guys got the report from the hearing commissioner, you know that there was a mistake on the code. How come you did not let her know and try to fix the issue and give her opportunity to update it for current code? Because since this is Kootenai County operation, you guys act like a one team. And that's kind of a little bit conflicting. And now you're asking the commissioner to dismiss the report.
Okay, and actually, it's not the entire report, it's just the one section. So I don't, it's your choice to answer, David, why it was caught, at the time it was.
Thank you, Commissioner Duncan. I was out of town for 2 weeks on vacation and a third week on my mother's funeral. So I didn't have the opportunity to read the report. And today we prepared for tonight's hearing. And that's the earliest I had had the time to review these things. I don't normally review them anyway for any project because normally I trust the hearing examiner and the staff.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, do you want to number this one?
Yes, B1002.
Okay.
It's page 250. Sorry about your family
Okay, so
issue.
can we reset the time to 3 minutes, please? Huh? Yeah, he's going first at 3, and then we have 2 other ones at 15 each.
And the PowerPoint will be B1003.
Okay.
It's
Okay, sir, state your name for the record, please. and your
Izette Motola, 957 North Armstrong Drive. After the reviewing the drawings, and they still submitted the drawings, even the applicant's lawyer presented it, there's not enough information of the drawings. Surveys are incomplete or not accurate. And also the record of engineer says do not guarantee to ensure the precision, accuracy, correctness, and assume no responsibility of liability for damages, loss of revenue, or injury might occur. and all liability is transferred to the Kootenai County taxpayer. Drawings include the generator, is this a ground tank or any, what kind of fuel is not clear. Qualification and size of occupied adjacent lot not in the county land in question, and none of the engineering documentation provides clarity around severely increased fire danger. This is a drawing I put on the left side, which is for the fire department. For any reason, usually you have the road widths and driveway slopes, and the basic surveys usually show some kind of a road dimensions. The applicant's survey imposes the proposed design on it, which confuses the county employees maybe, and their survey is wrong. The road width is not 60 feet there per their scale, it's 15 to 20 feet, and also their survey is not sufficient. Then this is their section. Their section is, even we mentioned it several times, not upgraded, doesn't show the grade. I put a simple hillside sections drawings, how they need to similarly to look. This is a big tower. It is sitting nowhere because there's no finished grade. So it makes your balloon study zero. It becomes totally null because you don't have finish for elevation. You cannot set a datum point if you don't have it in your section. And here is the thing. Plan shows nobody takes responsibility than the county. And we go back, we measure the roads, more fire issue, and fire county does not take the responsibility to, even though this is their statement. We have several lighting and issues regarding the lighting. This is Spokane County. It says stay away from the tall towers and thunderstorms, an issue that we've been constantly mentioning it. I think the county commissioner, all the employees of the team needs to worry, listen our concerns. Again, more lighting struck in our area, and that's it. Only comment I will make is, you guys changed their rebuttal. That's not fair. They should not happen last minute like that. They should be able to rebuttal our thing. That's not a fair. You cannot change it last minute like that. And since he got more time, only thing also I'm going to add is that.
Sir, he did not get more time. His time was interrupted by Commissioner Filios on the phone, so.
Okay.
Thank
Anyway.
you. Folks, I appreciate your passion, but we got to get through a whole bunch of people tonight, so I'd ask that you please keep the applause down. Hold on, sir. And let's just be respectful of each other, okay? And you are addressing the board, you are not addressing the applicant. Is it Alyssa who wants to go next, or Ann?
And that's a question. I had also signed up to speak individually.
Yeah, so then you, yeah, it's separate. So after we get through this, all right, I'm sorry, Ann or Alyssa? Ann, come on up.
So I am speaker number 2.
All right, we're gonna reset the time.
Well, we need to go back to the correct set of slides. So, when you're ready, okay, my name is Ann Wilder. I live at 349 Primrose Lane in Priest River.
No, just set that down and then push the button, please. That is just.
Should be green.
Okay, so yeah, is your microphone, there you go.
Give her three.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you said it good.
Okay, now if I push
That-
this one,
That turns it off. That's your
okay.
microphone.
oh,
And
okay.
this is the power.
And which one? Okay, no,
Should be,
no,
no,
that's
it
escape.
should be here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not
She
technically,
needs
I'm
to bring
technically
the-
challenged.
Try
So
this.
how do I get it back?
Oh, glad she indicated that, so try,
Okay, so we just need to go down to speaker 2. Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm so sorry about your mom. Speaker two. So, federal legislation language that matters. The 1996 Telecommunications Act, the 1996 TCA, has a purpose to promote the safety of life and property. That's U.S. Code Title 47, 253B. The Federal Communications Commission also promote safety of life and property. And unlike what the planner has stated both at the hearing on September 8th and tonight, the 1996 Telecommunications Act does not preempt health. I have this precise language from the act right here. It says, as enacted at 47 U.S.C. 332 C7B is amended in section 704 7B4. No state or local government or instrumentality thereof may regulate the placement, construction, and modification of personal wireless facilities on the basis of the environmental effects of radio frequency emissions, to the extent that such facilities comply with the Commission's regulations. Health effects were never preempted, neither are operations. Environment does not equal health. Plain reading only is required under preemptive law. Additionally, last summer in the August 13th, 2021 ruling on Environmental Health Trust and Children's Health Defense case number versus the FCC, case number 20-1025, in response to the FCC's attempt to keep its 1996 safety standards, the judge rules that the FCC must address the impacts of RF radiation on children and the health implications of long-term exposure to RF radiation, clearly demonstrating that health is not preempted. Let's see if I can figure this out. So, legal cases that matter. So we have given you these cases, unlike the speaker before me who mentioned cases but didn't give you specific information. I am going to look at just a couple of these cases here. You can check the rest out if you want to. The first one is the 2019 United Ketoa versus the FCC from August 9, 2019, regarding NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. NEPA requires that government agencies engage in a NEPA review intended to discover any significant environmental and public health impacts before a decision is made and construction is begun. Also, the second one is the 2019 Mozilla versus the FCC, case number 18-1051. In Mozilla, and this is 2019, in Mozilla, the FCC gave up its control over broadband internet, sending it back to local governments to regulate. Because of this, according to Mozilla, the 1996 TCA exemption clause refers only to wireless phone service and texting, not internet. Internet transmissions are best provided by energy-efficient fiber optics to the premises. Definitions that matter. So Mr. Leonard, I believe was his name, talked about significant gap in coverage not counting anymore based on a case he vaguely referred to but didn't give us any specifics. So I'm going to give you specifics. The 2005 Metro PSC versus San Francisco, this is a Ninth Circuit case law. It states, the TCA does not assure every wireless carrier a right to seamless coverage in every area it serves, and that the inability to cover a few blocks in a large city is, as a matter of law, not a significant gap. AT&T claims that they need to eliminate a significant gap in coverage on I-90 and across the lake based on a propagation map. However, significant gap can only be established by decibel per meter signal strength measurements or made and dropped call records. Propagation maps do not show that input data, and I didn't see it in the presentation either. Least intrusive means. According to the same case, AT&T must use the least intrusive means to remedy whatever significant gap in coverage they claim exists. Placing this tower in a residential area with only one egress point in case of emergency is the height of irresponsibility and certainly not the least intrusive means. Sorry about that. Okay, Kootenai County required services. So the role of county government, among other things, is the responsibility of meeting the needs of its own citizens in health, welfare, and etc. This is covered in chapters 10 through 13. Idaho Title 18-3907 states, under obstruction of highways, any person who, in any manner, injures or obstructs any public road, street, or highway is guilty of a misdemeanor. This means government should never allow city streets to be blocked so residents can't get through. With one narrow egress point in case of emergency, it would be a violation of state code to allow the building of this tower without first constructing a road upon which both the heavy equipment needed to put up the tower and the residents can pass each other safely. Under Idaho Code 54-4512, a bond is required for public works construction. May not be required in the county, but it's required in the state. Additionally, under 54-1928, the commissioners are liable for failure to obtain the bond. Therefore, would it not follow that Kootenai County Commissioners can also be personally liable for harm to residents caused by their own negligence in protecting their safety? RF EMR exposures from microwave irradiating wireless telecommunication facilities are a scientifically established health hazard. Insurers and wireless companies have an RF EMR pollution exclusion and exclude coverage for injury and death claims from RF EMR exposures. In fact, Lloyd's of London, who is a common insurer, has on their website this statement: Lloyd's excludes any claims arising out of, resulting from, or contributed to by electromagnetic fields, electromagnetic radiation, electromagnetism, radio waves, or noise. This project is a joint venture partnership between Kootenai County, AT&T, Smartlink, and Mr. Ingle. Sufficient liability bond coverage must be required for injuries, illnesses, and deaths caused by this choice of placement of the Smartlink tower, with no exclusion for pollution or health. I added Mr. Ingle to that list above. He seems to try to avoid that, but he is an applicant and therefore is equally liable and has the same requirements and responsibilities as the other contractually obligated applicants. Thank you very much.
Okay, Alyssa?
I'll be speaker 1 and 4. I originally had it set up. So I push the up button. This one.
Try that.
Thanks. Hi, Alyssa DeSonsic. I'm at 965 North Armstrong Drive. All right, I have a naturally very soft voice, so I'll try to speak up. Okay, so throughout this process, we've heard many parts of this equation from the applicants and everybody else. And if you look at any single factor, a tower in this location might make sense. But if you look at everything together, as we should, it is clear that the full equation doesn't really add up. So I'll touch on some key factors, and then I'll ask that you look at the full picture, as that is the only valid way of considering what's truly at stake. It's not moving.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. All right, so geographically, the Potlatch Hill community is a neighborhood on one of the hills that borders downtown Coeur d'Alene to the east. It has one main road that extends from the bottom of the hill to near the top, and that's the geography. But I ask that you recognize that this is not just a debate over the use of a piece of land. It's a discussion about the lives in this community. Potlatch Hill has on it a wide variety of vegetation and forest, a really beautiful mix of wildlife, and around 120 houses. But most importantly, it's home to about 350 people, including dozens of children, real people, real families, and real lives. Nearly 100% of the community has pushed back on this proposal because we recognize that our homes and our lives are actually being threatened. Now, I recognize that you, as commissioners, are tasked with trying to balance out the wants and business goals of a multi-billion-dollar company and their co-applicants against the needs of a few hundred people in one small neighborhood in our county. Typically, that's no contest. Big business almost always wins, and these types of applicants have largely been unrestricted in the past from pursuing their goals. In this situation, though, lives are at stake. And so this tower should need to be fully qualified and justified, yet the applicants have not done so. Throughout our multiple public hearings on this application, the applicant's rationale for building of the tower and placing it in this location have evolved. First, they talked about needing to eliminate a gap in coverage. Then they said their alternatives wouldn't work for various reasons. Then they said that the hill needs better emergency coverage. Then they tried to postpone the completion of the outstanding tasks and answering many of the questions that remain unanswered to this day. Then they said that they need this tower to offload an overburdened existing tower, but again, no alternative would work. And finally, I think we got to, at the last hearing, what is actually honest when they admitted that they believe that they are allowed to add towers when and where they want to, and that the citizens will just need to work to change the county laws in the future. Basically, they said that there's nothing that we can do to stop them. It was interesting to me, though, that in all the time that they've had to present and interact in a genuine way with us, that they haven't spoken directly to any of the legitimate concerns that we have posed. They didn't speak once to the severely increased fire danger that we'd have with the tower in this location on our hill. Some scientific papers that have been submitted in the past, estimates put that fire danger at an increase of 600%. No one on their side has mentioned that a number of our own fire marshals' minimum safety guidelines have not been met on that road. They still remain unmet and on the hill, nor did they say that they'd correct any of those issues. And not once did they speak to the fact that someone needs to accept liability for every aspect of this project, and yet no one has. My friends spoke about that issue already. So they didn't touch on any liability with regard to fire, road work, water supply, emergency exits, and the scope of the engineering plans, as was mentioned. Moving on to key findings. One, with regard to the applicant's own 5G coverage map, this is from their website. We learned that it's okay for marketing purposes, that they can have excellent coverage, but when it comes to this type of situation, they can lean on an asterisk that says that they might not actually have this coverage and they might need more towers in order to provide it. The ethics of this will be touched on in a minute. Another key finding was that through our own boots on the ground research on an AT&T phone, mine, we found that AT&T's coverage around the area is robust, and that includes calls, data, and streaming. I max out my AT&T data plan every month, mostly from home, up on the hill. Another key finding is that the analysis of the potential alternative sites the applicant themselves provided versus this particular new tower location showed us that when you remove the acknowledged existing coverage area from the maps and exclude the lake, you see that there is virtually zero difference in the coverage they projected this new tower would add. Do you know which was which? They all look exactly the same. And I'd also like to say, again, what Ann said was that projections are not legally defensible in terms of a need for coverage. Another key finding is that there are many existing towers. We already talked about that, but there are so many that are so close that you can actually see them with naked eyes. And I have terrible eyesight, and I can see them. Another key finding that was not mentioned previously is that the legal definition of a public safety communications tower is relevant here. The applicant has referred back to KC Ordinance 517 a couple of times, including at the last hearing, but it doesn't appear that those rules actually will apply in this scenario. The reason that they don't, in my mind, is that the FCC actually states on their own website, and we see in other legal definitions, that public safety communications tower is legally defined as a wireless communication support structure owned and operated by a public agency and used exclusively for public safety, which is clearly not the case here. Another key finding is that Potlatch Hill is in the Idaho Firewise program. Any neighborhoods on that list have to have accessibility to emergency systems already in place. As you can see, we have a number of emergency alert apps available to us on Potlatch Hill. And if that was not the case, we wouldn't be in that program. Granted, the apps don't seem to be frequently updated, but the fact remains that they are already available, and so a tower is not necessary to provide additional emergency services. As a side note, Kootenai County Emergency Management Facebook page notifies us on a regular basis that fire danger is a very real issue around here. A website link directly from their page shows something very interesting. They say that for fire prevention on a slope like ours, there should be at least 30 horizontal feet between trees at a minimum, if you can see down there in the bottom right. As you can see here, Potlatch Hill is a steep slope that is heavily forested. The danger included here to fire is clearly enormous and would be made significantly worse if a lightning attracting tower was added to this hill. And it doesn't follow the guidelines set out by Kootenai County. Now, although this has been brought up before, I think it's important to note again that the property in question is land that Mr. Ingle does own, but it is also land that he has not cared for, managed, or maintained. It is not up to fire code, and he does not live in the area or even in the state. His lack of responsibility for that piece of land up to this point, I think, should at least be considered. One last thing worth pointing out is that Kootenai County is approximately 1,300 square miles and has 107 named mountains. And we have hundreds of other hills within our geographic territory, which means that there are more than 500,000 completely separate 70 by 70 foot plots of land in this county that this tower could potentially be placed on as an alternative. The force with which this applicant has pushed to build the tower on Potlatch Hill when they have that many alternatives is suspect at best. So I need to move to, I'm going to skip down to. All right, so we made a FOIA request and the documentation was received, and for now I'm just going to set that aside with the understanding that we will use it if we need to in the future. But moving on, I'm going to summarize and conclude by mentioning a few more important items. One, as of 10 days ago, there were still 6 entities who had not yet fully approved the application. They may have passed the buck, but they didn't fully approve it. On or about the 20th, our hearing examiner, which was also mentioned, recommended that the application be denied. I'll let you guys deal with the details of that. I don't know why some of these numbers are not showing up. It must have been a transition between the slides that I gave you and how it's showing up here. But what this actually shows is the actual value of the property and the people of Potlatch Hill. This is a really important slide, and I'd like for you to take a look at it afterwards if you can see it on the PowerPoint presentation or the PDF. So the collective neighborhood investment in our homes is around $104 million, okay? Far more importantly, FEMA would calculate the value of our lives at up to about $10 million each in the event that our neighborhood and lives were destroyed. That equates to somewhere between $2.8 and $3.6 billion, which you would see here if you could see the numbers. So Commissioner Brooks, you have stated publicly in a number of forums that citizens need to really be prepared and be involved, and I agree. Clearly, we have been prepared as best we can throughout this process, and I believe that you as our representatives now here have everything that you need to understand the situation from all points of view. I do hope that there's a review of some of the other things that have been submitted up until now. Our collective job together, though, is to simply do the right thing by the citizens of this place that call the Hill home. I thought it was also important to point out that the Constitution of our state, as well as that of the United States, both allow for the full protection of citizens' rights, and that there is no federal law, including the 1996 Federal Telecommunications Act, which negates the ability of the public through our representatives to defend ourselves, and that includes our lives. Now, others have spoken about parts of this slide, and again, there's information missing, and I don't know why. But I'll just mention that I believe that the decision that you are making tonight in the next week or so is going to clearly impact we, the citizens of Kootenai County. So it's encouraging to know that each of you have stated that you work on our behalf. What it all boils down to is that we believe that there is a clear and correct finding to make in this case. The applicant has not met, despite all their slides, nearly any of the requirements and has failed to take any critical safety issues into consideration. Ultimately, liability will belong to whoever signs off on this thing, regardless of the caveats and dismissals that we've heard throughout the past few months. We, the people of Potlatch Hill, have never waived our right to consent, and we will continue to reiterate that we do not consent. So this slide, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but so he brought up my slide here, and what I'd like to say about this is that this is a strong suggestion or a request that you consider adding, if you're going to go ahead and approve this thing, that you would consider adding some of these things because it just makes sense to protect the people on the Hill. It wasn't a demand necessarily, but it was just something that we thought that we would put in there. We would like to have, through independent means, that the applicant must prove, as is legally required, that there is a lack of coverage. We did our part to show that there isn't a lack of coverage. Plus all of the other things that are listed in the first two there, that our fire marshal's own minimum safety standards should probably be met. I mean, that seems pretty obvious. That significant road upgrades and improvements must be completed in their entirety. And then all of the other things that he said don't really matter. It's because he thinks that they should just be able to put towers wherever they want to, but we don't think that that's true. And we would really like a consideration of the applicant's purchase of a surety bond in the minimum of the $3.2 billion, not $1 million as they've already stated. And that's for the total cost of the project to include at least the full engineering and construction, the road and water upgrade and upkeep, the lifetime maintenance and eventual removal of the tower, because it will be removed at some point, thorough safety and security of the tower itself, the value of the homes, and most importantly, coverage for the lives of all of us on the Hill. The others have been touched on already. So I'll just move to this. This is a quote that is on Commissioner Duncan's bio page. It's a great quote by John Stuart Mill. What I'd like to say is that if this application is approved, it will be going against the will of and potentially significantly harming every person in our neighborhood. The applicants have a vast number of other ways they can fulfill their business goals that do not include putting lives at risk, and we suggest that they choose one of those alternatives. This tower in this location would not be warranted for any technical reasons. This tower in this location would not be beneficial to anyone but the applicants. Therefore, we believe that this application should be denied. Thank you very much for hearing the people of Potlatch Hill community.
All right, folks, we are now up to the 3-minute speakers. If there was anything, if you're speaking directly to anything that's already been covered, then you can just state that instead of taking up the 3 minutes. Of course, it's your choice, but that's kind of what I would say is just, you know, what I was going to say is already in the presentation. Jared Pearson, opposed, wishes to speak.
I'm Jared Pearson. I live at 959 North Rutledge Court. Thank you for being here today and hearing us. This tower goes against Kootenai County Code in regard to the tower being over 60 feet and within a 2-mile radius of another tower, unless the applicant can prove a significant network coverage gap. I challenge the validity of their claim of a significant coverage gap. Alyssa, who is a member of our community and is a subscriber to AT&T, traveled to over 40 locations within the areas that AT&T claims to have no coverage. She was able to successfully prove sufficient coverage, and this proof has been submitted for the record. Their claims, AT&T's claims, only address the coverage for AT&T. This does not take into consideration the coverage of their competitors. This location is AT&T's best location for their business interests and their agenda. It would be the best interest of this community for them to find another alternative location. This significant coverage gap is merely a competing business obstacle for AT&T company. However, the tower is a significant hazard to this community. The approval of this tower would be catering to the business interests of AT&T and would be completely disregarding the concerns of this community. With my last little bit of time, I grew up here my whole life in Coeur d'Alene. In 2010, I enlisted in the Army after I graduated high school. I've been in 12 years. I'm stationed at the Hayden Army Recruiting Station, so I had the privilege to move back here to North Idaho. I didn't ever imagine I'd be able to buy a house in North Idaho for at least 20 years. I scraped every penny together that I could and bought a house in Armstrong Park, and just a year ago. And I didn't imagine something like this happening, and it would have an impact on the value of our home and just having it in my backyard. My property directly borders this property. And I really want to thank you, Bill Brooks and Leslie Duncan, for hearing us out today and hearing the community. Thank you so much.
Chris is listening too.
Who?
Chris Filios.
Oh, and Chris Filios, thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful night, and thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
So Chris, make sure you speak up if you have any questions for the speakers. Same with you, Bill.
Understood.
Okay, Art Collins, you don't indicate if you are for or against, but you wish to speak. Are you opposed, Art?
Don't cover the microphone with your papers.
You are elected to do land use planning. We elected you to do it. You have no requirement. You have you have to do it. And it's done via a comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan of Kootenai County says zero about these towers. Zero. It was approved in 1976 when 5G towers didn't even exist. Okay. So and 5G towers is land use. 5G towers are land use.
Art, you need to
Please
address the
address the
board.
commissioners, not the audience.
I know, but
Okay.
it's important we all
That's why.
understand.
We can all hear you.
Okay, well, that's important. 5G towers land use. You are required to regulate land use. If it's not in the comprehensive plan, you're dead in the water. You can't regulate it. You can't do it. We are a company, we are a country of laws. It is a state law, the Land Use Comprehensive Planning Act. And the primary purpose of that Land Use Planning Act is to promote the health, the safety, and the general welfare of the people of the state of Idaho, of which Kootenai County is a part of. It says health. August the 9th, they're saying we've got some probable health concerns. If you don't address that, then you don't belong to the office. You're not electing, you're not doing your duty as elected. Because the thing you have to do is to promote the health. Promote the health. If you don't do that, then you need to get out of the office. That's just a fact, folks. So I'm trying to be kind in this situation. Let's do the right thing according to state law. If it's not in the comprehensive plan about this whole thing of 5G towers, it ain't there. Now, if I'm wrong, then you come up and tell me that. Tell me I'm wrong. By God, I'm not. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit it and I'll apologize. It ain't there. Okay. And on that basis, I'm saying is, you need to amend the comprehensive plan.
Your time is up, Art.
Change the plan.
Thank you.
And the
Thank
plan
you.
is.
You're done, Art. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And the plan is the we
Okay.
the people
Art,
plan. Okay.
Joel Bowlby.
Man, I don't know if I can follow that up. So, hi, guys. My name is Joel Bowlby. I live at 940 North Armstrong Drive. I agree with everything that's been said, those presentations. I just wanted to add, I myself too, I'm a townie, grew up here, went to Fernan, Harding, Lakes, Lake City, off to college, came back, and now raising my family here. And I really think that you guys I really have to emphasize, if we're sitting on the lake, and I spend a lot of time on the lake in the summer, what is the most beautiful thing? What drives people to this area? The vistas and the views. And I get it, we've got one up on Beauty Bay. It looks like a little fake tree, but it's not in a residential area. And it's not right next to the stinking city that you look up to. If I'm sitting at Arrow Point or Kid Island Bay, I look up and I see a stinking cell phone tower. I get it, we're gonna have growth. I'm not anti-growth. It's gonna happen. We have to have smart growth. And I do not think that putting cell phone towers on the vistas right next to the most pristine, beautiful lakes, one of the most in the whole nation, it's been said, is a right idea. So that's my 2 cents. I hope you guys will just take that, and even moving forward on other projects that come up, please do take that into account, because I want to be able to consider and enjoy the lake and view and not see towers. When you start looking, there's a lot of them out there. And I've been looking as this kind of has gotten brought up. It sits on the top of my mind. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Elton Bain? Is that opposed, wishes to speak?
I am opposed.
Okay.
Commissioners, my name is Elton John Bain. I live at 3706 East Sky Harbor Drive, which is right at the top. And I wanted to give you a very quick painting of what happens. You get off Potlatch, and it's a 2-mile run right to the top of the hill. It is served by one two-way street. One lane up, one lane down. In a fire, all you need is a broken axle, a tree that comes down, and you're doomed. We are, those of us who live above. And no matter where that fits, if you've exacerbated the risk of fire, you've increased the potentiality that a significant number of us are going to fry up there. Now, we meet every year with the Firewise guys, try and promote fire awareness and all the kind of modalities we can employ. I would submit to you, and your primary duty is to safeguard us and our homes and our lives. By allowing something that exaggerates or exacerbates the risk to us, I think you're abrogating your duties. I'm not anti-capitalism. I'm a lawyer. I represent corporations all over. I enjoy it. But there's still a duty to safeguard folks. All we have to do is look at Paradise, with a corporation that didn't do its duties and a governmental agency that didn't do its duties. And you had significant loss of life. I would submit to you, if you allow this to go forward, you'll exacerbate the risk of fire, exacerbate the risk of loss of life. And I think comparatively, you're also going to exacerbate a breach of your duties. Thank you.
Chad Bird. Chad? And then after Chad would be Melissa. Both opposed, wish to speak.
Hi, Chad Bird, 3326 East Fernan Terrace Drive, Coeur d'Alene. I really don't have anything to add. I'll just state my opposition, and maybe the one thing I would add to what Joel said about the aesthetics, that alone should be enough to kill this tower. It's just, it'd be line of sight from my house, and also from a land use perspective, it doesn't seem to be anywhere near the highest and best use of that property. Thank you.
Melissa, opposed, wishes to speak? And then Virginia Long goes up next.
Hi, I'm Melissa Bird, 3326 East Fernand Terrace Drive in Coeur d'Alene. I agree with everything that's been said, specifically the risk of fire and or increasing the risk. I'm an insurance agent, so we try to mitigate risk at all costs. This obviously would enhance that risk, not only from the standpoint of obviously the most important life and property, the fact that it's getting harder and harder to insure homes in this area, and this is just going to add to insurance carriers denying coverage in the future. Thank you.
And then after Virginia is Stephen Petrosky.
Hi, my name's Virginia Longo. I live at 4599 East Potlatch Hill Road in Coeur d'Alene. I agree with what's been said so far, but I can add a different perspective. I oppose this project for so many reasons, from a health standpoint, aesthetic standpoint, but most importantly, a safety standpoint. My family's lived at the end of Potlatch Hill Road, which is on the east side of the project, for over 60 years, well, for 6 years. I'm growing up on the mountain. I'm well aware of the challenges of this road and the proposed approach to the intended site of the project. Earlier in one of the demonstrations, they said, well, it's real and valid that the road isn't up to code, but it will never change. And that's true. It hasn't changed, but it should. I have, growing up on this, I have deep concerns about the safety of the 5 families, with a 6 on the way at the end of the road and potential for harm. The road has always been narrow in spots, requiring one vehicle to pull over so the other can pass, even for vehicles that are standard pickup size. We'd never even been able to have a school bus. I mean, when I was a kid, we had to walk to the bottom of the hill. Our children weren't able to be bused because of how narrow the road was. The school district would not do it. And I've also witnessed fire trucks trying to come up the road. We had an elderly woman at the end of the road. They couldn't turn around sometimes. They would back down the mountain. It's a real significant problem. When they were trying to turn around, it would take them several minutes to up to 15 minutes to get the truck all the way turned around in the circle that you can turn around in. We are, like I said, we're east of the proposed site, and should a fire occur, our only escape route could potentially be blocked because the fire is going to come right down the mountain. And even though the fire district might say it's okay, we've had fire people with Firewise come up and say you have 2 to 15 minutes to get off the hill. And how are we going to do that if it's coming directly across our road? As you know, the increased potential for lightning strikes for a tower this size is documented and significant. To add to this danger, the only water source we have on our end of the road is from a well. And if you have a fire, you lose electricity. And if you lose electricity, you lose water. How are we supposed to fight this fire if we get stuck up there? With no water, no alternative evacuation route, and a decreased ability for a fire crew to help the consequences could be dire and life-threatening. There's also concern about the water supply should the tower require any blasting. It took 4 attempts for my family to secure a 563-foot well. Again, this is the only water source for 6 family homes without an alternative source. My mom actually was approached to put up something kind of like this in the past. She declined because of the nature of problems that could go along with it, with health of the people on the hill and also with fire problems.
All right.
So thank you for your time.
Yep. Okay, Stephen. Then after Stephen is Virginia Tate.
Good evening, Board Commissioners. My name is Steve Petrosky. I live at 3114 West Pascal Drive. I am speaking in opposition of this tower proposed. I find it shocking that a cell tower can be brought so quickly through the county process, but public safety for us that enjoy and live on Potlatch Hill are ignored. I can't express the frustrations I have. I have made repeated contacts to several public officials about the condition of the road, fire danger, and dwindling water supply on Potlatch Hill Road. for over 5 years, only to be pushed aside, ignored, and forgotten. Yet a cell tower can be approved by the same public officials without even considering the existing issues. Approving this tower is salt in the wounds that have yet to be treated. Priority is the community, not a company. The taxpayers have spoken, the locals have spoken, even your hearing examiner has spoken. No tower. The citizens of Kootenai County are not going to roll over. We stand united with a common goal. No tower. The broken promises and legal agreements by the city of Coeur d'Alene and the county have been brought to light because of this tower. Deny the tower. Then fulfill the promise and obligation to my family, the Tate/Petroskis, along with the other families on this hill. It's your job. Thank you.
After Virginia is Brent Lyles.
I'd like to thank the commissioners for allowing us to speak. Much like Virginia Longo, who I have known all my entire life, and perhaps as you know, you may have been to Elk Point. I live at Elk Point. I'm the president of Elk Point, and I would like you to sit from where you're at, and I'm sorry, Chris, if you can't see it, look at the end of the wall. That's the base of the tower that I'm going to look at both my property. That's what you're going to see at Elk Point events and Stella's on the Hill every time you come up. And I want you to think about that. And Vlad, I want you to think about the 5 years it took me to get my short plat through. I realize that was prior to your time, but I have not forgotten Sherry Howell. 5 years for a short plat. You forced me to give you a 60-foot wide easement for that road that I have 1,500 contacts to the fire department, to East Side Highway District in Kootenai County. There are no guardrails. The road is full of potholes. The road is sinking. I have paid personally money to Meckel Engineering to come and show that the road is less than width required by your own fire department. Your own Gerald Archer has been we forced him to come up and measure the road, and he admits that it is not wide enough. The road is too sharp of a turn to get a fire truck around. When I short platted, you required me to put a fire hydrant on a well that now, thanks to a growth of population, doesn't meet standard, and I have to bring in water trucks to water and irrigate. I would also like you to think about the fact that when I short platted, you granted me a building site I have been trying to build on, as the county knows, because I'm trying to short plat the adjacent 8-acre parcel that I turned down a tower on, the only other site they looked at. I am the adjacent property. It is within 300 feet. But I can't put my house on that because I can't get the water. And why can't I get the water from the city? Because the city won't annex me to the city of Coeur d'Alene because the approach on the corner is wrong. You guys have failed to do your duty to protect us on the road as we have paid and promised. I have previously supplied the 1955 agreement where East Side Highway District said they were taking that road straight through past where the Anderson family lived so that there was an egress. That has not been done. 1955, we're pushing 100 years, folks. Bad performance. I also have 2 historical sites within 100 feet, less than 100 feet, some of them within 25 feet of this project. You considered that there's not any danger, and I'll make this quick. I've submitted a lot of stuff. U of I has a fire burning simulation of 2 minutes. This is a homeless camp my family cleaned out because the applicant, Mr. Ingle, was too lazy to pay his real estate taxes or clear out his homeless people. Here's a letter from the city of Coeur d'Alene.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tate.
You're welcome. I will submit this.
Brent Lyles. And then Justin O'Connell is next. Folks, please keep it down. We're trying to get through everybody tonight.
Good evening, Commissioners. I am Brent Lyles at 4176 East Potlatch Hill Road. 1 Timothy, verse 1, chapter 1, verse 9 through 10. In summary, laws are for the lawless, or in this case, conditions of use, rules are for those that break them, for liars and murderers. Just like AT&T reps continue to keep lying about this tower and putting our families in jeopardy. They say they vetted other sites. It turns out they did not, despite what Mr. Leonard stated. In the last meeting, Ms. Griffin admitted they only considered one other site. That site, Ms. Tate's site. Ms. Tate was told the tower would be no more than 50 feet tall and would be on the back side of the property. Turns out it's not. They told this county the tower would be no more than 150 feet tall. Turns out it can be taller according to what their previous attorney, Ms. Allen, stated at the last hearing. Maybe that's why she's not here anymore. They say they'll follow local laws and guidelines. Turns out they will not. Ms. Allen also stated that when she said federal law trumps local law. They're trying to ram this thing down our throats. They say it'll be discreet. If you go out to Tubbs Hill, the lake, Cougar Gulch, areas where they haven't taken any pictures, Harrison, you can see where this tower is going to be very clearly. They keep saying it's going to meet grounding standards, yet they cannot cite or describe what those are. They say it'll be protected from lightning and fire, but it may be, but the residents nearby will not be protected. They say it'll help with public safety. You know, our sheriff's department is against this tower. They came out last hearing. They say this is a new service area. The area they're proposing, there's nothing there. There's never going to be anything back there. There's nothing on the lake. Despite what the hearing examiner said, this tower is not compatible with the existing homes in the neighborhood. If it is, maybe AT&T and Smartlink should consider one of these sites. 5005 Cougar Estates Road in Coeur d'Alene, or 18726 North Horsepower Drive in Rathdrum, or 3544 Highland Drive in Coeur d'Alene. Or let's go a little out of the area. 1802 North Salmon River Lane in Spokane Valley, or 19 Falcon Avenue in Spokane, or an even better one that Smartlink might like, 3920 Clark Court in Gilbert, Arizona. If they're looking to improve coverage on the south side of the lake, then they should put a tower there. Or was that a lie too? I ask you to please follow through with your stewardship to the citizens of this community and reject this application. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, Justin O'Connell, and then Van Hargraves is next.
Hi. Hello, is this the mic right here? Great. I hate public testimony. I hate sitting through public testimony. It's so annoying. My address is 760 United Nations Plaza. Anyway, long time no see, by the way. We're getting beers after this. We've long time been colleagues at Central Planning. You heard from my colleague already. You basically have no choice in any of this. This is all going through. It's a Central Planning AT&T production. Why are we even doing public testimony? I think if you do a COVID emergency, you can just get rid of this whole process. Anyway, you've heard from him. We're doing this no matter what. Thank you for working with our partners at AT&T on all of this. We've been working with them for a long time. The Fairview program. AT&T is so important to us. They've helped us spy on the American people on a, quote, vast scale. The partnership is highly collaborative and largely classified. AT&T is basically a leading partner for Central Planning through our fiefdom, the United States. Central Planning and AT&T are in this together, if you will. The world knows all this because of that pain in our sides, Edward Snowden. Anyway, the people argue that AT&T has violated their Fourth Amendment rights. We're done with the Constitution. Ignore the people. One of Central Planning's biggest assets, Barack Obama, argued that if we made AT&T surveillance of the American people with the NSA public, it would reveal state secrets and damage national security. Nice one, Barack. Thank you. AT&T was instrumental in Bush's warrantless wiretapping post 9/11, thanks to the Patriot Act and Bush Republicans, some of whom may be here tonight. If it weren't for AT&T, Central Planning would not have had access to hundreds of billions, if not trillions of records. They even sift through the messages for us, so thank you. Now, there's all sorts of wild speculation about 5G tech, mind control, blah, blah, blah. Look, I'm sure Central Planning is working on it. We basically spy through the entire world, and the ideas we like, we take for ourselves with the help of AT&T. The Rockefeller University actually has mind control technology in mice, and what's the first thing Rockefeller did? I love this guy. He makes them hungry. We're going to make this, take this operational in humans as quickly as possible. Now, I'd like to live long enough to see it. That's why we need to ignore the hundreds, if not thousands, of scientists who have called for a 5G moratorium. Their concern is around potential emissions and all sorts of dangerous radiation. Look, we're all sacrificing ourselves on the altar of Klaus Schwab, so just get over the health concerns. These people can just stay at home if they're that concerned. See what I did there? COVID joke. Let's be honest. Your hands are tied. As the AT&T rep said, beers after this? This is all rigged, and we're going to go through with this. There's nothing you can do to stop us. Even if you voted no on this, we would just sue you and destroy the county. I heard our partner at AT&T is nice enough to actually paint this thing. I suggest Soviet red. AT&T has been around a long time. We're going to be around a longer time. We're going to shove 5G, 6G, 10G, all the Gs down your throat. If you get sick, we'll just call it a pandemic. RFK was referenced. We're done with the Kennedys.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor.
Got rid of it.
Thank you.
Ask RFK Jr.'s uncle.
Okay, Van Hargraves and Chris Van Atta. Okay, folks, please.
Hi, Van Hargraves, 820 North Centennial. That's hard to follow. The gentleman from AT&T made a statement that there's no substantial evidence that our complaints are backed up with anything. That was absolutely pig swill, okay? Absolutely false. I presented 3 scientific papers to this previous board, okay? One was a massive study by the University of Oklahoma using the National Lightning Database that showed that 99.8% of all the high incident areas in the United States were within 1.25 miles of a cell tower. It was definitive proof that cell towers cause lightning strikes. Then AT&T came out and basically told us that they're going to put a lightning rod on it. Lightning rods are meant to ground lightning when it strikes the actual tower. They say nothing about the area around it. University of Oklahoma described that in detail. I presented 2 other papers. One was showing that the 2 highest risk states in the United States are Montana and Idaho for number of dwellings at risk. The other showed that 2/3 of the acreage burnt in the Rocky Mountain states is due to lightning strikes. You don't need anything other than that. You have a huge public health problem with AT&T here. They have not brought a single person in to refute a major scientific study, okay? They could have had their lightning experts in here refuting that. That study is in here on record, and everybody's had a chance to read it. The previous commissioner read it and asked me several questions about it. This is just absolute nonsense that you are allowing this to happen. I know emergency medicine. I was board certified for much of my career. I also was the chief pre-hospital medical officer for Humboldt County in California and Bernalillo County in New Mexico at different times. This is a huge public health problem that everybody's ignoring. You have everything you need to turn this down, okay? It'll either be turned down here or it'll be turned down in court. AT&T has not done their due diligence on the lightning strike issue. They haven't even acknowledged that paper, and they've had 2 speakers speak for an hour.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, so Chris Van Atta may wish to speak. Opposed? Okay.
Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. Oh, sure did. Spreading the wealth. Thank you for your time today. So I live at 4701 East Potlatch Hill. I'm one of the families down at the very end. My wife, 18-month-old, and one on the way in December, live at the very end of that road. We are probably the very last house to get out should something happen down Potlatch Hill Road. Not only has AT&T not done their due diligence on lightning strikes or anything else, but if you look at their site plan and look at the requirements of the Kootenai County Fire Department, they require a 20-foot minimum radius turnout from road to access point to this site. And they require it to be 90 degrees. Go look at the plan. The plan's about a 150-degree turn to enter and exit the site onto a road that varies somewhere between about 18 and 25 feet wide. And at the point this spot is, it's about 21 feet wide. It's impossible to have an interior turn radius onto a road that's only 20 feet wide. The interior radius of that might be 20, but you're going to drive through someone's yard. So they can extend roads, do all kinds of things. The site plan doesn't even fit within the requirements of the county fire department. Okay? So they haven't done any due diligence. They haven't done enough to even put a plan together that is feasible. So what they're going to do, get you guys to approve it, then ramrod down all kinds of changes to the site. Because they're going to have to. Because they won't get county fire approval for this. Okay? It will not happen. I have gone up and down that road. There's utility lines that do not clear the 12.5 feet. They're at about 11.5 feet. Those will have to be changed and moved. No one's done any research. I urge you, if you're going to make a vote on this, go up there. Take a look at it. Visit it. I tried to turn off this road onto the main road, Potlatch Hill, in my SUV and couldn't make it. I had to stop and turn around. What happens if my wife, pregnant, or young kids at the end of the road while they're building this site, they get a truck stuck and we need to get off the hill? What happens about fire? By the way, we talked about lightning. What about welding activities on the site? This is a big electrical tower, essentially. Electronics fail. If you're increasing the fire hazard and the safety of everybody on that hill by even 1%, you're doing a disservice to us. You're risking our public safety. If you do approve this, you must force AT&T, in my opinion, to make sure that that hill is protected and has the right water, has the right systems in place to prevent or mitigate fire, because otherwise we stand no chance. I can't think of a worse way of going down than being burned alive. I really can't. And watching my family do the same. I can't see how in the world increasing our risk by even 1% makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Johnny Silva, opposed, may wish to speak? No. Okay. And Brian Wheeler, opposed, may wish to speak?
No, I think most of my consent has been talked about.
Thank you. Sandra Hall, opposed, may wish to speak.
I just have a couple of comments to make. I appreciate you hearing us. I'm vehemently opposed to this tower. And I'm concerned that many municipalities and county governments are taking steps to forbid or to rule out the possibility of putting any type of a cell tower in a residential neighborhood. And I feel like the county and the city needs to address that in the future. And as a result of my trip to New Mexico last week, I was very cognizant of every cell tower in my travels. And I will say that this is a commercial endeavor, and I saw no cell towers of any type in a residential area. They were all contained within commercial development areas along the freeway, those types of installations. So please consider our opposition to this tower. Thank you.
Thank you. And Marcy Coulter, opposed, may wish to speak? Marcy Coulter?
I donated my time.
Okay. Jason Lambert, opposed, may wish to speak?
Jason Lambert, 847 South Bailey Court. I live in the community. Be quick, most of my concerns have been talked about, but obviously all this is pretty palpable, a lot of emotion. We have a unique situation for our family. We work from home and we homeschool, and so we are at home 80 to 85% of the time. We're in our house, and the fire dangers are very extreme. We had, if you remember, in 21,
I believe it was January 13th. I was checking my own records, but we had the violent windstorm. We had a tree in our backyard fall down onto our house. The reason I'm bringing that up is several other trees fell across the road. I was in such a panic for my own house that I don't know exactly how bad they were, but I know that there was severe street blockage on Sky Harbor. It is a very dangerous community. The fire risk, the hazards, just that, not even a fire, right? A windstorm came through and dropped trees, and we can't get out of our community. It's very, very severe up there. We don't have access to any other way. I've talked to personal friends of mine who are on the county fire department. They've talked for years, decades now, on trying to get another way out of that hill, and they have yet to come up with it. So now we live in a community that I know I can't speak for everyone else, but my home, I have purchased and spent our own money on fire hoses so that I can go deploy them if I have the time. Okay? And so the fear is real of the people that actually live on that hill. Thank you.
Thank you. Shauna Lambert, opposed, may wish to speak. Okay. Ben Taves, may wish to speak. I don't think Ben's here. Janice Richardson, opposed, may wish to speak.
I'm Janice Richardson. I live at 846 South Bailey Court. Most of what everyone has said I agree with, but something I want to bring up is about the insect and bird population as well. Research has proven that it does affect insect life, which also affects bird life. It affects their migration. They become disoriented, and it is questionable about plants and how those are affected as well. And where we live, that's really important for the biodiversity and the environment. So I just want to add that one point. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Looks like Michelle Meunier. Okay. Yes, opposed. So Todd Meunier, opposed, may wish to speak. Is that how you say your last name?
How'd you say it?
Meunier?
Hey, yes, correct.
I'm Todd Meunier, address is 3110 East Fernand Hill Road. They spent a lot of time talking about visual in their presentation. Do you notice not that many people talked about visual? They cared about visual because they think we care about it. Sounds like a lot of people are concerned about fire. And speaking of visual, they took a bunch of pictures. One was from Fernand Hill boat launch. By the way, it's pronounced Fernand. He said, so anyways. They didn't do anything on Fernand Hill Road up there. It's like, what is that going to look like? I kind of think I know what it's going to look like. They gave us their presentation with a rehashed rebuttal was old and antiquated, like this tower is going to be. Earlier, last meeting, I asked about an environmental impact report. Quickly, she said, oh, it's not required. Well, yeah, it's probably not required, but you guys can require it. We know there could be different issues up there. A little off the way. Environmentally, so we have bald eagles, osprey wildlife mating around the area. And like that lady said, I was going to bring up is, we know hearing is precious, or as a human, these birds and all these wildlife, they can pick up on these frequencies. And to come here and have that destroyed by a tower, by a multi-billion-dollar corporation doesn't care about us, that's offensive. And another thing is, do you remember when these people used to have those big, huge satellite dishes in their backyard because that was the coolest thing around? You don't see those anymore. Where do they go? Everyone got rid of them. Do we have a removal clause in case, to remove this? let's see. So, yeah, those towers are antiquated. Let's see, when does this get removed? Oh, fire issues. Okay, the fire issues that they're bringing up, we already have fire issues. It's a fact that it will be enhanced with that tower. And then the 1996 study for the electromagnetic frequency guidelines, obviously that's outdated. And their rebuttal was misleading at best because someone else came up here and said that you do have to consider the health effects. So that wasn't a good rebuttal. Let's see, so what else? How much time do I have? 15 seconds? Oh, no. Oh, I guess the last thing I could say is AT&T is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They don't care about us. You guys were elected to care about us. Please care about us.
So I'm going to read the following names, and they are all do not wish to speak, but if you change your mind, please stand up. Barbara McFarland, opposed, does not wish to speak. Jean Ann Gabby, I guess it's late enough to keep these on. Opposed, does not wish to speak. Okay, go ahead. Yep, you can come up if you want to speak.
I wasn't planning to speak, but these are some notes that I typed out yesterday, just putting some thoughts together. My name is Jean Ann Gabby. I live at 912 North Armstrong Drive. I'm 75 years old, and I bought that home for a specific reason. Many of the pictures up there are my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren, and my father, who died 2 hours after the picture of being his great-great-grandchild for the first time. When we orient and move to a place like that, we do for a specific reason. I used to live at Parkside Tower. That's not what I wanted. So as a licensed clinical professional counselor, practiced for 32 years, I would like to introduce the concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the reason we're here in the first place. And I didn't prepare a PowerPoint. I teach all of my clients, patients about this. The second tier of the human pyramid, which is very much like the food pyramid, is a triangle. The first layer is food and water. We need that as living beings. The second tier is shelter, safety, and security. And without that, we do not and cannot attend properly to the next tier, which is belongingness and love. Then the next tier is self-esteem, and the top tier is self-actualization, which is doing what we want to rather than what we need to. So I pulled up a few things just to mention in case there was opportunity. Facts. Maslow's hierarchy of needs for animals and humans places our home in the basic needs tier, just above the category of food and water. This means that nothing can and nothing shall rearrange its importance for homeowners. For homeowners' peace of mind, emotional growth, financial soundness, mental stability, and ability to trust others. I'm going to skip down through there. Neighborhoods become memory machines that help us keep alive some of the strongest sources of what gives our lives meaning and well-being and happiness. The role of a home and the sense of place in a person's life is significant, especially for senior citizens. Home provides security, control, belonging, identity, and privacy, among other things. But most of all, according to more than 7,000 studies, I'm a researcher as well, it's a place that provides us with the centering, a place at which we can leave each morning and to which we can return each evening without fear that it's going to be damaged or gone. And without that, we cannot function as a human. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Karen Wickham, opposed. Wish to speak.
Alrighty. Hey, Leslie. Hey, Bill. Hey, Chris. All right, I'm just going to speak for a minute about my background because it's applicable to the points I'm going to make. I have a background in law enforcement, particularly criminal prosecutions. I'm a recovered lawyer, so I know a little something about making a case. And I'm now a real estate broker with Sotheby's. So first, from the law enforcement angle. This situation creates what I'm sure council is aware of, something called an attractive nuisance. It's the kind of place where homeless people like to meet. You know, I'll meet you at the bottom of the cell tower, we'll smoke our meth there. It's the kind of place that children climb up to take a selfie and have an accident. The liability for those things is not an imaginary concept. The second thing is, as a recovered lawyer, I understand that basically what his job is to do is the bare minimum of what is required by us, by the standards that have been set. I feel that there's a good faith argument regarding consumer protection, health and safety, and the idea that AT&T can do this just because we can. That is not what this community is about. As a real estate broker, I can also say with pretty great deal of confidence, this will hurt our property value. I sell primarily high-end properties, many of them on Falcon Ridge. I'm the president of the HOA on Falcon Ridge, which is directly above Potlatch Hill. I spent an hour today in my living room with Bob Gonder from the fire department. And we talked in great detail about what our options were if there was a fire. And it is terrifying. It is going to make people think twice about whether they should sell their homes. And we love our home. We love our neighborhood. And since we can't count, of course, on AT&T to address our concerns, council spent a half an hour addressing things of which we have no interest, not addressing anything that we've been concerned about in the last few meetings. So we're asking you to intercede and give us the power that you have to do the right thing, because this is truly terrifying to us. And when I hear someone from a fire department say, frankly, if we don't get to you in time, you will be burned alive. If that is not enough to pick an alternative position for this cell tower, I don't know what is. And we also have an eagle habitat right there. The thought of those eagles re-nesting on top of that cell tower, it makes, I'm sure, all of us cringe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Elizabeth Thorpe, opposed, may wish to speak. Okay. Oh. All right, now you're really testing me. Sue Kuhn? So, okay, opposed, does not wish to speak, or may wish to speak? Pass. Thank you. Jerry Albrigo, opposed, does not wish to speak. Okay. Abigail Lyson, opposed, does not wish to speak. Paul Anderson, opposed, does not wish to speak. Caitlin Taramillo, opposed, does not wish to speak. Deborah Bishop, it does not say, but I'm assuming opposed, does not wish to speak. And Heidi Boehm, opposed, does not wish to speak. Is there anybody else who came in late and did not fill out a form? Yes, sir?
I filled out a form, but you have to call me on.
Okay, and you didn't sign up under somebody else? Okay, what is your name?
Don Blinker.
Okay.
My name is Don Blinker, 3521 East Pine Hill, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, 83815. I'm an RF engineer. I don't work for AT&T. I have looked this over. Basically, I was going to respond back to some of the cases that were made in Bill Bewley's article. It appears that when this neighborhood was built, that the road wasn't improved. That's more of a zoning issue. Telecommunications is pretty heavily regulated. We have 5 federal agencies that do everything that we do, okay? FCC gives us our licenses and maintains our licenses and makes sure that we meet the coverage, because we have coverage obligations that we have to have. So if you buy a license, you have to cover a certain percentage if you're a carrier within that time period. 10-year and 20-year are the earmarks. We also have FAA, which regulates the height of a tower. We also have NEPA, which is National EPA. In some states, like Oregon and Washington, there's also SEPA. So there's additional requirements for EPA. I'd like to bring up the fact everybody's bringing up about the fire, but in 2018, when Bayview was on fire, people couldn't call out to the fire department because there's no cell coverage there. So the people of Bayview requested that Verizon build a tower there in the next year, and the federal government gave that jurisdiction the money to build that tower. Okay. Just for facts, I also want to bring up the thing that this tower will also provide 911 location. FirstNet gives will be able to take your cell phones and direction find you within 10 meters of where you are. So, and just for an added point, when I moved here in 1996, 94% of the homes in Kootenai County had telephone lines. Currently today, 37.5 have telephone lines, which means that almost 60% of the people have no home phones and rely upon mobile communications. That's the reason why there's critical 911. Yeah, as far as their coverage goes, I work with prediction models all the time.
Be respectful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ma'am, did you, go ahead.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Stephanie Fetzer. I live at 1217 South Reynolds Road. I don't live in the neighborhood, but people that I love do. And I'd like to take just a couple minutes to talk about something that has hardly been touched on here tonight, and that's the health effects. I noticed he mentioned 4 or 5 agencies that regulate all of this stuff, and he didn't mention anybody regulating or monitoring the health effects. We know that there are health effects from these antennas. I'm going to quickly share a story about my daughters. We moved from California about 2 years ago. About 3 years ago, my twins started to get really sick, and I'll be as quick as I can be. We didn't know what was going on, but they regressed and got sick, and by the end of their sickness, they couldn't read or write or pay attention. They couldn't paint. All of the things that they loved to do, they could no longer do. They laid in bed and cried and said they didn't want to live this life anymore. They were diagnosed with EMF sickness. Subsequently, we found out that there were cell antennas hidden in the fascia of the church that we were attending. So we decided that we would leave. So we moved to Idaho, praying about a house on a mountaintop with no Wi-Fi and no antennas. When we moved, the closest antenna was 2.25 miles away. Today, the closest antenna is now 0.4 miles away. When we first moved here, my daughter's health recovered almost instantaneously. They lived a vibrant life. They swing dance in the community. They love it. They've been out and about, and we really cherish this place. They're sick again. And I think part of it is the exposure. They've been out a lot. There are a lot of antennas downtown, the antennas that have moved closer to our home. So I would say, why can't we talk about the health effects? There's, the FCC limits what you can talk about as far as how you can deny or approve an antenna. And I would say, look at the FCC commissioners. Currently, there are 4 commissioners. They were all lobbyists or attorneys for the telecom industry. So they don't care about health. Their stated goal at the FCC is the proliferation of 5G. They don't care about our health. it's up to you guys to care about our health. I saw your car outside. It says I'm in your corner. I pray that you're in the corner of these families here. And I'll close with this. My daughters are sick. We're seeking out various kinds of treatments to try to recover them again. And we were filling out an intake form 3 days ago with one of my daughters. And one of the questions was, do you consider, or have you considered, and if so, how often do you consider, sorry about that, suicide? And we're Christians, and I thought, this is a no-brainer. I know that they don't because they love God. They're good girls. And she paused for a second, and she started to cry, and she said, I would never do it, but I think about it because I hate my life. So I would say for these families here, they're really focused on the fire stuff, and it's all, I agree with all of it. It all makes me sick to think that they could be trapped on the hilltop. But the things that they don't know yet is what could happen to their kids living by that antenna. So I just pray that you would consider that. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Okay, last chance for anybody in the audience. All right, how about on Zoom? Do we have anybody wanting to chime in on Zoom?
Is anyone on Zoom at this time that would like to speak? Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. If there's anyone on Zoom at this time that would like to speak, unmute yourself and go right ahead.
Art, you've had your chance tonight.
I have a question.
What, you need to wait till after.
Okay.
Commissioners, I'm seeing only, it's like 2 people that might actually be, possibly want to speak, and they don't seem to be unmuting themselves.
Okay. So I think at this point then, I can entertain a motion to end public testimony with the exception of the written rebuttal from the applicant. Is that correct, Pat?
Yes, I would also just inquire of the applicant's representative if he did want to give verbal rebuttal at this time.
Okay.
Then I think the motion would be appropriate. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so do you want to make that motion or you want me to? And it's October
Go ahead
6th,
and
this
make it.
one, okay. All right, Chris, anything further before I make this motion to end public testimony?
No, I have nothing to add at this point. Go right ahead.
All right. I move that we end public testimony and schedule deliberations for October 6th with an exception for a written rebuttal from the applicant.
I second the motion.
Chairman Philios,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
All right, so our deliberation, like I said, will be scheduled 9 a.m. October 6th. You are welcome to attend or watch on YouTube. There will be no more public testimony at that point. And if they wanted to get a copy of the rebuttal before the testimony or before the deliberations, how would they go about doing that?
They could just request it from community development.
Okay, or maybe since there's such a large audience, we could post it?
We could
Yeah,
certainly
we could
post
do
it
that
on the
too, yeah.
webpage.
Okay, so it'll be on community development webpage as soon as the applicant gives that to us.
And I'll commit to get it to the county the day before by 5 p.m. so it's posted the day of, so it's not like a last minute scramble to pull it up.
Okay, but if you have it done before then, it'd be great for us to read it,
I
so.
appreciate that. I'm actually
Yeah.
committing on behalf of somebody else.
Okay,
So I'm leaving that as the last possible date to get it to you, but I'm sure we'll get it to you before that.
okay. Thank you, and with that, it is, I don't know, oh yeah, there you go, 8:30, this meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.